Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane, and it's not the 8:30 live stream. This is the 5:30 a.m. live stream, although it's 7:30 a.m. here on the edge of Kruger Park in South Africa. Now, under normal circumstances, wild horses wouldn't have dragged me away from the UK at this particular juncture in time, but my daughter's wedding is a little different. And there's a group of us sharing her honeymoon here in South Africa, and it'll be a few days before I'm back in the UK. So it's Wednesday, 1st of November 2017, and this is the second day of the INEOS injunction court hearing in London, where Joe Boyd and Joe Corre are challenging INEOS and their attempt to establish an injunction against all dissent against any corporate activity in the UK. So this is an absolutely seminal hearing. This has ramifications that go far beyond just the anti-fracking campaign, because if INEOS are successful in achieving this injunction, then effectively it sets a legal precedent potentially for any corporation to effectively establish a legal barrier against any dissent by any community that they are seeking to establish a presence in. So if you're in the southeast of England right now, I would absolutely implore you to go along to the Royal Courts at Fetter Lane in London. The nearest tube station is Chancery Lane, and go along and support Joe Boyd and Joe Corre. Now, yesterday the INEOS barrister was boring everybody with their evidence, and Tom Pickering, who's the prime mover for INEOS, has proven himself to be nothing less than a sociopathic liar. And I don't even hesitate to be that direct, because I have read Tom Pickering's statements and know for an absolute fact that he has a very casual relationship with what most of us would regard as truth. So apparently the INEOS lawyer will just wrap up this morning, and then the representatives of Joe Corre and Joe Boyd, I think in reverse order, Joe Boyd first and then Joe Corre, will be presenting their counter evidence. Now, the judge in the original hearing, where there was no opposition, of course, stated that he was minded to sanction the injunction when the court hearing convened on September 12th. But after just a few hours, he very quickly realised that INEOS had, in his words, misled him. And he did point out that there would be implications for that. So this is a very important case. And if you can't get along to the Fetter Lane courts, then I would encourage you to go along to the website, the Crowd Justice website, where Joe Boyd is seeking to raise the financing for his legal representation. Now, I must confess that if I was in the UK right now, I would be in London at that court hearing, but Joe Boyd and Joe Corre know very well that, of course, they have my absolute support in these proceedings. If I wasn't in London, of course, I'd be at Kirby Misperton, and it's now almost 3 weeks since I left Kirby Misperton, and a lot has happened in that time. And let me say that some of the actions that I've seen posted up on Facebook and other social media have been absolutely amazing. I mean, truly inspiring. The creativity has been absolutely incredible, and it's been wonderful to see people from right across the country come to give their support to the community at Kirby Misperton. I guess the most disappointing factor is that the people of North Yorkshire, where the seeds have been sown far and wide over the last 3 years, but with a few notable exceptions, and in the scheme of things it is a few, but with a few notable exceptions, then the people of North Yorkshire seem to have somehow got into a state of stasis. It's almost like deer in the headlights, and unfortunately, this old adage of "but what can you do" seems to be somewhat pervasive, disappointingly, amongst the population of North Yorkshire, and in particular, the populations of Kirby Misperton and Great Hampton. And like I said, there are some notable exceptions, and not least, Bishop Graham Cray and his wife Jackie, who've been at the forefront of the opposition against third energy. But sadly, the people of the village don't even seem to have really wanted to do their research. They don't really want to see the magnitude of the devastation that is likely to unfold literally on their doorstep, on the basis that if they actually look at the evidence, then, they might not be manifesting something of that ilk. Well, that's, of course, exactly what the establishment want you to do. They want you to be totally inactive. They don't care that you don't like what they're doing, as long as you don't do anything about it. The good news is that there are a few hundred people who have come down to Kirby Misperton on a regular basis to express their concern and their opposition against this insidious industry. And of course, this right now is a critical juncture because Third Energy have the frac tanks in place. I must confess that I haven't seen any evidence to convince me that they have run the 4.5-inch liner down the well as per the frac plan, let alone pressure tested it. And frankly, I'm dubious as to whether they've actually had the time to do that. But it wouldn't surprise me, because we've seen time and time again that this is an industry that works on the principle that it's far easier to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission in the first place. So with the frac tanks in place and the ironwork hooked up, then all that remains for Third Energy is to get the sanction from the Secretary of State to actually go ahead with what will be the first frac in the UK since the disaster of Quadrilla at Priest Hall a little over 6 years ago now, nearly 6.5 years ago, in the spring of 2011. Now, if this frac goes ahead, then of course we can but hope that, like Rathlin Energy, who pressured up the well at West Newton, but then lost control of the well, they had fire in the hole, subsequently had to call in a specialist team from Aberdeen, bringing in the coil tubing equipment, and ended up having to abandon the well. And we can certainly hope that something of that order of magnitude occurs at Kirby Misperton. But we can't bank on that. In southern Queensland, and ironically, it's actually just 1 month short of 3 years since I was sitting under a tree in Brian Monk's property in southern Queensland, having spent the previous couple of weeks being shown around the absolute devastation of southern Queensland by Brian Monk and David Monk and John Jenkin. And of course, the output from that visit was voices from the gas fields. And the devastation that you see in Voices from the Gas Fields of southern Queensland has accumulated over, at the time, just 8 years. It's now 11 years since the unconventional gas industry established a presence in southern Queensland, and now a raft of area right across the Darling Downs has turned what was prime agricultural farmland, just like the Vale of Pickering in North Yorkshire, into an absolute disaster area. It's a sacrifice zone. There's no other way to describe it. It's a sacrifice zone. And that's exactly what the British government, it looks like they're going to do with the north of England. They're going to turn the north of England into a sacrifice zone. And what I hope is that the video footage that has accumulated from Prestonwood Road and from Kirby Misperton isn't used in future history lessons to show that there were people who were aware of the likely outcome of this industry and tried to warn the local population and give them the opportunity to do their own research and to see the magnitude of the damage to the water, the soil, the air that had occurred in a very, very short space of time. Now, it just so happens that here in South Africa, just 10 days ago, the farming community in the Karoo, which is the other side of the country here, actually won a seminal court victory, and they managed to get the courts to effectively rule that the South African government's so-called fracking regulations were effectively inappropriate and fundamentally illegal. Now, I'm sure that's going to be appealed, but at least in the short term, there is some temporary respite against this industry establishing itself in another stunning part of the world, the Karoo. And that was Shell. who were looking to do that. Shell wouldn't dare do that in the UK, neither would BP or any of the other majors, because they know fine well that the activist community would obviously target their downstream business, i.e. their petrol stations. So this is an absolutely seminal moment in the ecology of the UK. If INEOS are successful in the courts in London, I mean, obviously, whatever the decision, I'm sure it will be appealed one way or the other. Hopefully, of course, that what will occur is that the media will pick up on the case, as indeed they already are, and highlight the extent to which the corporations are seeking to effectively ride roughshod over not only British legislation, existing legislation, but also communities right across the north of England and the East Midlands and over in Cheshire as well. So in the north of England, obviously right now, on the west side of the Pennines, Preston New Road has been running now for coming up to 10.5 months. Quadrilla are way behind schedule. We know the pad is a complete disaster zone. The moment there's any rainfall, it floods. And we know whatever is on that pad is going to get washed across into the adjoining pasture land, which is dairy land. And the Environment Agency and the Health and Safety Executive are not exactly being transparent over the contamination that is inevitably being caused there. And we're also seen in Kirby Misperton already, the adjoining brook that runs down the western side of the well site has had some contamination. But is anybody actually looking to make any analysis of the samples there? If they are, the Environment Agency are being very tight-lipped. So I just see that Joe Boyd has just tuned in. So, good morning, Joe. It's very early in the morning. I'm sure the adrenaline is pumping as, you're heading into the second day. I'm sorry, obviously, for the circumstances that caused you to miss the first day of the hearing. But, I wish you and your legal team every success. And, of course, I shall be watching closely as the day unfolds and looking for the updates on what's occurring. So, meanwhile, if you are in Yorkshire, then please share this information. Please encourage people to watch Voices from the Gas Fields. You are dealing with a sociopathic industry, and sadly, we have a sociopathic government. They really don't care what you think. They don't care what opposition you mount. And this is exactly what I told the community of North Yorkshire 3 years ago. I said it's really important that obviously you pursue every possible legal challenge so that the people in Yorkshire that have never ever had any cause to challenge the establishment in any way, shape or form can see that every possible avenue has been pursued to prevent this abomination from being unleashed in such a beautiful part of the country. Those legal challenges were exhausted as of December the 20th last year. So all that remains now is effectively what at the moment would be termed civil disobedience. But that civil disobedience is absolutely crucial if the ecology of the UK is to be protected, and if we are to prevent a situation where future generations are effectively condemned to lives of unimaginable abject misery. Already we're paying more for a litre of water in the UK in many places than we are for a litre of fuel. Certainly once you take the tax away from the fuel, then the litre of water is perhaps almost twice as expensive as the fuel at the pump. This is the absurdity of the situation. And of course, if this goes ahead, then the likelihood is that water will be the new oil. It will be in short supply, it will be rationed, and you can bet your bottom dollar that it will be taxed to the hilt. So it's a few days now before I'm back in the UK. This is the first break. I did tell my daughter that the timing for her wedding was extremely inconvenient, but nonetheless, it is what it is. It's the first break that I've had from the front line, really, since I was out in Australia 3 years ago with the Monk family. And I had seriously hoped that by this time this industry would be as dead as a proverbial dodo. And I am pleased to say that that is the case, of course, in Northern Ireland, in the Republic of Ireland, in Wales and Scotland. It just seems to be that for some reason in England we do not seem to be able to get the population to wake up to the fact that the British government really doesn't give a flying frack about you or me. The only thing they're concerned about is doing whatever their corporate paymasters bid them to do. So the onus really right now is on all of us. And I am, obviously deeply sorry that I can't be on the front line right now, but I shall be back in Kirby Misperton very soon after I land back in the UK. So once again, an amazing job that you guys are doing. To the two Joes, best of luck. I'm really rooting for you, as are many, many other people right across the planet, because we understand the importance of what it is that you guys are doing right now. And, for those of you at Kirby Misperton and at Preston New Road, you guys are doing an absolutely amazing job. And, at some future date, you guys are going to be acknowledged in the folklore of the country. And I have to say that the actions that I've seen at Kirby Misperton have been truly inspirational. And, I wish you guys all the best, and, I'll be back with you soon. And can you do something with the weather, though, before I get back? Because it's absolutely beautiful right now. It's not too hot. It's very pleasant. A lot of wildlife. I don't know if anything's wandered behind me while I've been talking. So I've got my back up against a tree so that I don't get caught by surprise here. Anyway, a couple of days out here in the Kruger, and then the trek back to the UK and back to the front line. So thanks for joining me this morning. I know it's really early in the UK, but I'm rooting for you guys. Take care.